Hey everyone, this is Ryder from Skit, and I hope you have a great weekend ahead. Important update today on targeted EIDL grants, the progress there, and some of the comments you've left on what you've heard directly from the SBA. And number two, the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant disaster rollout yesterday. Huge problems from the SBA. I'll go into specifically what happened, and I'll also recap the eligibility, because even though this is a small percentage of total businesses that would be eligible for the SVOG, it may be relevant for you. So it's worth mentioning again, especially because these are significant grants. And of course, the EIDL loan increases are off to the races. I'll do a quick reminder there and share some updated information. Thanks so much for tuning in and subscribing. As always, I so appreciate your support and you liking this video so more people see it. We've been covering all things SBA for 13 months now. We are going to keep doing this so you never miss out on any important news through PPP forgiveness, through EIDL loans, payments, and on and on and on. We've got you covered. So if you need help in this area or have questions, please subscribe. And of course, consider downloading our free app. It's HelloSkip in the App Store. We've had a couple 100,000 of you using the app. You can go to trackeidlgrant.com to get a $10 credit for the app for future services. Okay, let me dive in. Shuttered Venue Operator Grant. I want to start here because this is the disaster rollout. The big announcement was April 8th, it would be live. Again, this SVOG grant was approved on December 27th as part of that legislation. Okay, it is now April 8th. They had time to think about who qualified. They shared qualification details back in January or February. April 8th was the day. Then they changed the rules to say you could apply for both a PPP and a Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, because many of you were waiting. I'm not going to apply for PPP because I'll wait for SVOG. Thank goodness they changed that, because this is such a mess. And I'll share what exactly happened yesterday. But just to recap here, I'm going to read who is an eligible entity for a Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. Eligible entities may be live venue operators or promoters if you promote events in person, theatrical producers, live performing arts organization operators, museum operators, motion picture theater operators, and talent representatives per the Economic Aid Act. This is a long 40-page document. It's a full-time job just to prepare for this. It's kind of ridiculous if you think about it, compared to the EIDL loans. Of course, those are loans, and the business must have been in operation as of February 29th, 2020. Okay, this is what happened yesterday, that this page was updated where you could log in and register and create an account. And you landed on a home page, but then you could click on My Applications. Well, before you got here, actually, they had some weird two-factor authentication. It wasn't even two-factor authentication. You had to use an authenticator app, which doesn't really make any sense, because if you want to tie it to a phone number, you should use two-factor authentication. Anyway, that should have been a signal right there that things were amiss, and whatever vendor the SBA has paid millions of dollars to do this really botched the rollout. Some basic stuff they missed. Well, you could click Apply Now or Resume, and you'd get to a page like this with several steps. You can see it's behind my head here, but you can see there's about 8 different sections. Each of these sections are very, very long. Shuttered Venue Operator Grant Application, eligibility questions about your organization, affiliated companies, receipts and revenues, proposed budget for use of grant funds, required documents. This makes sense for many folks asking maybe for $1 million+. However, a lot of folks we've heard from are only asking for like 20,000, 50,000, 100,000. So much smaller compared to like the $1 million+. So it doesn't make sense that all of this is treated equally. Like it should be, if you're applying for less than a certain amount, there's a streamlined application. Again, this is basic policy stuff. I used to work in policy, that I'm surprised the SBA hasn't done. Maybe they just assumed that this is such a small program that they wanted to spend time focusing on EIDL or PPP. Well, we know how those are going as well. And on this page, you have to start uploading files. The problem is the file uploads did not work. Any format, PDF, JPEG, of course, you should be uploading PDFs, but no format worked. That seems like the most basic thing to test out. I get probably because of the volume, they may have had server problems that weren't accepting any documents. Still, they should have stress tested this or done a phased approach, knowing there would be this off to the races moment. Anyway, no uploads worked, and these were blockers. You couldn't advance in some areas without uploading files, so you basically couldn't go past step 2. The second problem here was when you had to answer specific questions. For example, 17 here, does applicant venue have a defined performance space or audience space? Well, this wasn't a requirement in the documentation. However, in this form, they made it a requirement. So again, another confusing blocker, and there were a few other questions like this you couldn't get very far because on this page the upload documents didn't work and you couldn't advance unless you completed this page. Anyway, so the SBA caught wind of this very quickly in the morning. They were looking into it. Then they decided to basically close applications to make it fair for everyone. This is what they've said here. Due to technical difficulties, SBA has temporarily suspended the SVOG application portal. SBA is working closely with the portal vendors, who they probably paid a ton of money to get this right, and they couldn't do some basic things. For those of you looking to apply, stay tuned. I will say a couple things. Number one, I believe there is lots of funding for this, but as soon as the full portal becomes available, I will do an in-depth video on our app. I'm not going to do it on our channel here because I know this is a bit more specific, but I will do it on the Skip app, an in-depth video that talks about each of the steps. All right, before I talk about targeted EIDL grants, quick update on the EIDL loans. Well, we did this poll yesterday, almost 3,000 votes. 58% of you have said that you've emailed the SBA for a loan increase. As you know, right on our app, the post from a couple days ago, you can send a pre-populated email to the SBA. In most cases, you won't get a return email. However, we heard reports that they were changing that. In any case, just make sure it goes through. Make sure you got the email address right, and you include what they ask for. It's not the end of the world if you don't include the specific stuff. Their main reason for that was to make sure they could identify you if the application number was off. They want to make sure they know who's asking for the increase. Then they will reach out to you. That being said, again, I think the direction email the SBA at COVID EIDL increase request, I believe that's what it was, seems like a terrible procedure. Unless they have an email parser that can detect when the emails come in, it seems like it would be a terrible manual process to go through, pull out the emails, put the information, match it kind of one-on-one. So I hope they have some automation there, fingers crossed, because to me, I think the biggest barrier for these increases will be the speed which they can get through email. So I sincerely hope that they have a batch processor to basically trigger some responses. Otherwise, it'll take forever. Finally, on targeted EIDL grants, pretty good news. Almost 15% of you have said you've been approved. That is up from around 10% last week. I'm going to look at the comments here in a minute, but we heard rumors that the SBA had said they're done sending out targeted EIDL invites. But I would never say done completely. I would say done for now, because Guzman has said, and we've heard other lawmakers push for this too, that they want to rethink who's getting these invites to the extent they can by law. So just because you didn't get the targeted EIDL email yet, I would not give up hope just yet. We have heard good news in the comments that many of you have gotten approved. You've gotten the remaining amount. So if it was just you, maybe you got the remaining 9K. Happy to hear that. However, there's more frustration than there is good news. People still waiting, frustrated, or even you were denied and you're disappointed about that. Anyway, I'd love to hear in the comments. Share what you've been through this week, whether it's EIDL loans, targeted EIDL grants, whether it's waiting or you emailed the SBA. I'd love to hear a quick recap. We're going to be running more polls next week to give you an update on the progress. As always, go download our free app to track EIDL progress, track PPP progress. We have a new tracker coming next week. As always, thank you so much for subscribing and continuing to support our channel and supporting us. I hope you have a great weekend. Stay well, stay healthy, and I'll see you tomorrow.